You're watching Diecast Breakdown with Chuck Ellis, David Johns, and Mark McHotwheel. So sit back, strap in, and hang on. The breakdown starts now.
Well, hey there, folks. Chuck here, and welcome to Diecast Breakdown. I am so excited you're with us today. I am thrilled today because we've got another member of Family Group joining us to talk. But before we do that, I want to make sure I thank our patrons that make the show go, especially our executive producer level patrons. Shout out to our brand new patron, Reviews Through Another Lens. Thank you very much. Mike's Mods and Customs, Mad Visions, Video Geek Productions, First and 64th Customs, TWYCE Diecast. Thanks, David. DrivenDreams.org. Make sure you're donating your cars to DrivenDreams.org. Check that out. 24,000 cars for kids in need in 2024. Very cool cause. And, of course, Mr. Dane Self, who is our special super secret patron, who just sends me money directly, which is a little strange and a little nice. So thank you, Dane, for that. But, yeah, well, I'm thinking about make sure you go to DrivenDreams.org. Mark, our co-host in absentia, is collecting 24,000 cars for kids in need all over the globe. You don't have to ship anything. You don't have to donate anything. You just have to pledge cars and drop them off at your local charity and show some little proof that you did that. And it goes into the big pot that we're compiling for the end of the year. And last year we did 14,000 cars. This year we're shooting for 24,000 cars. So, and while you're clicking around on stuff, don't forget we have a merch store. Justin Ellis does all our merch. It's really awesome. I'm wearing some right now. So is David. And it's another cool way to support another cool person in the community doing awesome art. So, all right, that's all the bit of business that I have today. I am not going to be doing this show alone. Of course, I am joined by my amazing co-host, Mr. David Johns. David, how the heck are you today?
Doing good, Chuck. We got another good one. We got another exciting interview with
this
guy that is really contributing.
This is one of those ones where I was like, this is right up David's alley. I'm the down and dirty, cut him up, drill him custom guy. David is the refined pinky in the air collector of rare and premium and unusual diecast. So this is going to be a treat for those of you who are more on the David side of collecting of things. But I got to say, I love some of these articles too. And he's got some real quirky vehicles in his list of bona fides, however that's pronounced. So anyway, if you haven't figured it out by now, we're joined by Alex Winson. So for those who don't know, where did the tiny cars enter your life, and how did that translate into writing?
I think it was an accident, really. I was still a child in a pushchair. The story goes that my father mainly would be pushing me around the street where I grew up, and I used to have a habit of pointing at everything and going, what's that? What's that? What's that? What's that? What's that? Buildings, trees, cats, whatever. And after a while, I started pointing at cars, and instead of my father just mindlessly saying again and again and again, it's a car, it's a car, it's a car, he then started to read the badges on the back of them and try and find out what those cars were. And within about a month, apparently, I would be pointing at things and saying, well, that's a Ford Sierra, or that's a Vauxhall Cavalier, or whatever. And it was a complete accident because nobody in my family has got an interest in cars at all. Dad has a passing interest in aviation, but cars, no, not a chance. So I got into collecting through that. They would buy me small cars. I grew up with Corgi toys, with Hot Wheels, with the original Matchboxes. So yeah, that sort of led me down a certain alley, joining lots of Facebook groups when that social media network exploded. Funnily enough, you mentioned customizing at the start of the show. I actually do bits and pieces of customizing here and there, and I'm not averse to taking a drill to something. So I think it was through a customizing group I became aware of just how big the community was and how rapidly it was growing as well. I remember when I first started collecting, there was barely any 1/6 scale cars anywhere, like not anything of any significance anyway, and you would be paying high price for anything really. And there was not, I remember aimlessly sort of Googling at one point about trying to find 1/6 scale Skylines and Supras and things when I was in my teens, and not being able to find anything. But at some point, I think through collecting Tomica, I found Lanley Group, and I would be glued to each and every article sort of through the weeks that he released, and 'cause I think it was just John and David at the time doing the most of the writing, and I was glued to it because it was I was able to see Tomica was a fixation of mine. I was able to see what was being released, what was upcoming, what was out there, and I can't remember what year it was now. He did a shout out on Facebook requesting contributors, and I thought about it in passing. I just looked at it and thought, maybe I'll do that. I kind of like writing, but I haven't written anything. And my wife actually said, "Go for it. What have you got to lose?" And I went for it, and here we are.
Here we are,
Yeah.
200 articles later.
Yeah, it's been a hell of a journey. It really has.
So can I ask, just from maybe a similar lens that we see the diecast world through? Initially, you grow up, Matchbox, Corgi, Dinky, all the locals. Maybe you get a taste of Hot Wheels later, or maybe at the same time. But talk about that, not transition, but maybe a gravitation towards some of the higher end brands. Why? What is the appeal to someone that says, I wonder if there are cars that look more realistic than Hot Wheels and Matchbox?
I think with me, I have a bit of a fixation on quality and accuracy. Not necessarily, though, but I have to admit that some of my rarer, sort of more obscure things are not the most accurate. They're not the highest quality. But I certainly, from an early age, decided that when I had a toy car in my hand, it helped me when I was a child to envisage playing and creating scenarios in my head and things if it was an actual more realistic model. And that translated, I think, through all of my collecting habit, that I would always say to someone that it's worth looking at more established, more premium brands than Hot Wheels and Matchbox, because as much as I love both Hot Wheels and Matchbox, sometimes there isn't. Once you pick up a premium diecast, especially a Tomica, you just see there's a vast difference, and there's a lot of people who, I know that now Hot Wheels has brought the Elite 6 ball lineup out, that will probably be saying, "Hey, Hot Wheels has got that," but I don't know. I've not seen one firsthand yet, but I guarantee it probably won't be as good as Tomica because they've been doing it for a long, long time, and it's just the feel and it's a whole experience rather than just you have a car and a card and that's it and it rolls, and it looks a bit like something. With Atomic, there's the box art. You've got the whole feel of something. It's a little bit more of an experience.
Yeah, they are almost photorealistic if you catch them in the right setting and right light. And Chuck, you've got a Atomica Limited Vintage to compare to. I'm curious, maybe the new Bugatti from Hot Wheels. How does that? What's a comparison of those two?
I mean, it's still a Hot Wheels car, and I don't mean that as a negative. I feel like Hot Wheels cars are their own thing almost. Like they have a certain amount of stylism to them. There's a certain amount of not toyness, but there's a look. There's a look that Hot Wheels cars have, and it has that. It's good. It's very, very good for a Hot Wheels, but it is not a Tomica Limited Vintage. It's not a Pop Race or a GCD or even a Mini GT or something like that. It's still got that Hot Wheels-ness to it, which again is fine if that's what you're going for. Like it's a car that would look fantastic next to a bunch of premium Hot Wheels cars. It is a car that may look a little toyish next to a Tomica Limited Vintage. Like there's still that thickness to the paint that they seem to have, compared to like a Tomica that has a much sharper lines, much more detailed indents and cut lines in the doors and stuff. But don't get me wrong, for $20, I think it's a great car. And I love the lift off hood. I like the engine detail. It's very nice. But for $8 or $9 more to get a TLV, like I've seen them for $32 for a really nice TLV. And the difference is substantial in what I think you get for the money.
Well, hang on first. It's removable bonnet, Chuck.
Yes, touche. Sorry.
I've seen this so many times when I've been on Facebook and Instagram about collectors, and in the Lamley comments as well. You do get quite a lot of very passionate comments and people who really know their stuff. There's always I think the recent Pagani Hot Wheels brought out as was it an RLC car? I can't remember, but there was a real comparison between that and the tarmac version of it, and whether or not the difference in price was worth it. And there's always going to be that look with the Hot Wheels that it is a Hot Wheel, and you can never escape, in my eyes, that kind of, it's not a toy, but it's still a Hot Wheels kind of thing. It's still got that connotation to me, and I think, especially when I looked at, I can't remember what, but there was a real good example. I think there was a Majorette R35 GTR GT3 version. Then I had the Hot Wheels version, and then I think one for Mini GT, and you can just see the difference. It's almost like 3 different steps. And even though the Hot Wheels one's a premium, to me it was at the bottom. It didn't look anything like as good as the Majorette version, and then both of them didn't look anything near as good as the Mini GT. I think premium diecast, it's, especially with some of the Chinese brands coming in now, I think some of the quality is a bit questionable on those, but once you stick to an established brand, I don't think there's no real comparison to me.
Back with more Diecast Breakdown after this word from our sponsors. Legendary Hollywood concept artist and designer Fireball Tim Lawrence has created 3 exclusive pieces of automotive art based on the 3 hosts of Diecast Breakdown. Get these and other brilliant designs printed on mugs and more at fireballtimgarage.art today. Here's this week's small channel shoutout.
Bear Pig Customs.
If you have a favorite Diecast channel with less than 700 subscribers and you'd like to see them highlighted on a future episode, email us at diecastbreakdown@gmail.com. And now back to Diecast Breakdown.
You mentioned Majorette, and I wanted to call to the viewers and the listeners' minds an article which you had published recently. We'd like to congratulate you on that in a very well-established magazine called Diecast Collector out of the UK. Long time, 25, maybe 30-year publication.
Yeah, it's been around a while.
We'll talk about the article and maybe the subject of it and why you decided to pick the topic you did.
Yeah, it goes back to my first sort of days at Lamley. We were encouraged, journalists here call it going on the blag, where you go and reach out to manufacturers, you reach out to people, and you try to establish links and basically ultimately get them to send you stuff. And it's that kind of connection you need to build up. And I'd always been passionate about Majorette, going back to my real early childhood, because they were a fixture in most of the supermarkets and petrol stations in the United Kingdom. They were everywhere, and I fell in love with them. And they were one of the first brands that I reached out to as a Lamley contributor to say it would be great if I could write about your cars, and would you be happy with that? And it began a working relationship that's lasted, I think it's been 4 years at least, and it culminated in December last year. They invited me to the influencer event that they were hosting, the first one that they've ever hosted, actually, where they gathered up. I think there was 8 of us. They gathered us from all corners of the globe, from Australia, Majorette to myself in the UK and all over Europe, Italy, Spain, Germany. We were all there. It was like the UN, and I wanted to cover that because it was such a significant event for me, not just in my collecting, but in my life. It was a real moment for me. It really put me back in touch with why I fell in love with the hobby, and it was great to get some acknowledgement of some hard work I've put in for Majorette to do their to support that brand. And that was the real reason I wrote the article, just to basically wax lyrical and put a load of hyperbole in it, because it was that amazing. It really was.
So it was a outstanding article, and this is your first one in print. Fantastic. A friend of the show, Diecast Dude, got invited to the same event that Alex is talking about.
Mhm.
Did you meet him from the Netherlands, Alex?
Yes, I did. Yeah, he's a great guy. All the guys that we were there with were fantastic. They really were. I met some real passionate collectors and made some connections that I hope will really last. So
Could we get maybe a behind the curtain recap of what that event is like? I mean, you're talking about 8 people in the diecast world that got to experience it.
there was a moment, some of you may have caught it, where I think I shared something whilst I was at the event, and then I had to immediately pull it because there had been crossed wires somewhere in management. And I shared this thing thinking I'm the first person on Instagram that shared this, and it had to go within about 6 hours. I was still in Germany. I think it was the second day of the event, and I was having dinner with my wife, and I got this really hurried email. No, that shouldn't have been on it. We're sorry, but it was, yeah, it was fantastic. They really did. They pulled out all the stops. It was incredible. Simba Dickey is the conglomerate that owns Majorette. It did own Shoutout for a bit. Solido is there. They've also got the range of Simba Dickey toys that they have, but there's also all these other brands under that roof. Like there's Marklin that are there, and yeah, Herper I think are there. Yeah, and Tamiya. They've got like a European distributor for Tamiya, I think, and there's all these like incredible like just brands everywhere, and they brought us together and sat us down and basically thanked us all for doing what we do. And I think the first day we were all a bit like, "Wow, we're here," kind of thing. This is actually quite significant. And then we got to tour the showroom, which was just everything that they had on offer, new, and some prototypes that I can't talk about. And we had the experience of Mark, who runs the Majorette France. He is Mr. Majorette. That guy is. If there's something that he doesn't know about Majorette, it's not worth knowing. Basically, he is incredible. We had his not full collection, but his full knowledge on show, and he brought with him a range of Majorette through the ages, and it was one of the most alarming things for me to see, and one of the most reassuring things to me as a collector of Majorette was to see. I thought that when he brought all these out, that the staff at Majorette, I thought maybe they would just be not indifferent, but not really engaged, maybe. But it was from everybody right up to management level. They were absolutely like fixated on the history of their brand being put in front of them, really passionate about it, really, really engaged with it, really, really happy that it was all there and that they were learning and this whole experience was there. But yeah, we had a lot of good opportunity to talk about things. We were able to do a Q&A where we were asking questions, and we were able to fire our own ideas at them, which was quite a significant thing, that as a collector, to be in a position where a manufacturer is saying to you, tell us what you want.
Yeah.
And as a room of us, we were full of ideas. That could have lasted a whole week. It really could.
That's what I love about this community. And Chuck and I talk about it all the time, about when we get representatives from these manufacturers on sometimes even this show, we see those ideas and ideas that the fans send in ahead of time. Sometimes we see them come to fruition, and it's really amazing. We really have the best hobby in the world. And one of the ancillary benefits of it is that we have such access to the people that make the decisions. And sometimes we see our requests actually get made. And that's really cool. It's refreshing to hear, again, your story of how that happens at Majorette as well.
Yeah, they were incredible people, really, really passionate brand. And there was a lot of listeners will probably know that there's always an issue with Majorette wheels. There's always an issue with Majorette wheels. People just hate them. They seem to make all the wrong decisions with them. They're ugly, don't fit, anachronistic, whatever. But we got the chance to talk with some of the development guys and to give them the feedback and see how it was received and how it wasn't taken as like an affront. They kind of looked at it and went, okay, well, how can we fix this? What can we do to make it better? What would work? And there were loads of moments throughout the time that we were in the showroom and able to get hands on with a lot of these models where we would approach them and say, look, these wheels will work better on this, or these don't work at all. You need to figure out something. And there was moments where we would even pull out our phones and say, this is how you should be doing it, you know.
Yeah.
And they were really receptive to it. It was a great opportunity to be, and just to hear some of the ideas that the other guys had as well, and how we all seemed to be strangers on the same wavelength. There seemed to be a certain common ground between all of us. I thought I would be the only one firing kind of random, weird and wonderful cars at them, but they had another couple of guys there that were just like, you know, have you tried this? Have you tried that? And I thought, wow, that's a really strange suggestion, but it seems to work. So it was a great event all around. Yeah, really good.
We've talked about Majorette and we've talked about a lot of premium stuff. Something that I really like that you've brought up a couple times recently is my little favorite dark horse brand, Maisto. And their fresh metal series has caught your attention a few times. And I keep telling people they're sleeping on Maisto. So I appreciate you bringing that to the world forefront there. You know, can you tell us a little bit about why you think Maisto is a brand worth watching right now?
I think they've got a lot of experience. They've been around for a long time. And I think the fresh metal line, it almost passed me by because I'd seen one of the T2. I covered the T2, I think, for Lamley first, the Maisto Fresh Metal T2. That was my first Maisto review on Lamley, I think. And it almost passed me by, but I think I'd seen one on a custom site page on Facebook somewhere, and there was a lot of people saying, hey, that cast is really good. Where have you got this from? Is it a Hot Wheels? Is it Matchbox? Is it whatever? And I was quite surprised to see it was a Maisto, and I thought, you know, I'll give these a look. And I hadn't been too impressed with what I'd seen. My wife is Greek, and every year we go back home to her home island, and they've got this huge toy store about 10 minutes down the road from her. So I go there every year, and one of the things that they have constantly is Maisto, and the fresh metal line is always on the pegs, but it doesn't tend to catch my eye a lot. It always seems to be quite badly proportioned, quite toyish, quite cheap looking. But I caught a post that they'd done, Maisto themselves have done on Instagram, and someone had commented, I think it was about their Lamborghini Countach and how poor it was as a casting, and they'd commented, the marketing team, in a way that was basically like, look, we know, but it's not really aimed at you. It's aimed at kids and at children, and this is the way that they get into collecting and everything. And your opinion of it is, if it's good, it's a bonus. You know, as a collector, if you get into them, brilliant. If you don't, it doesn't bother with. And I thought that was really kind of refreshing. And then I saw this T2, and I thought, I actually, where I live in the UK, the die casting collecting is so poor in terms of what you'll find on the pegs. You just don't find anything. So I'd gone into TK Maxx, which is UK TJ Maxx, and I saw this thing hanging off the peg, and I thought, it's orange. I love orange. I'm having it. And I was really pleasantly surprised to handle it and to see it. So I wrote the review for Lamley. In the meantime, I caught the Alarm Busters version of the same casting, which is the one where you press it down and the siren goes off. They did one in French fire livery, and I thought, that is really, really neat. That it's you know, it's got a two-piece body. One half of it's plastic. It looks like a toy, but it's properly cool. It's what I would have been collecting when I was a child, and that inner child is still with me. So I got hold of that as well, and then I started to follow more collectors on Instagram and more pages that were looking at Maisto, and I saw stuff like the Bronco, which I covered recently on Lamley. I think they did an 830 M3 that didn't really impress me too much, but I thought it was a brave choice for them to do. Was it a Ford pickup truck they did as well? And there was a Chevrolet Blazer, and I thought, these are really, they know what they're doing with these castings. They're aiming at it. The collectors like me who will look at it and think, see, that's really kind of cool. That looks good. And they're cheap enough to just grab. They're half the price of Hot Wheels in the UK.
They're about 97 cents here compared to $1.18, $1.25 for Hot Wheels. And I agree with you. Like I didn't think much of them. And if anything, my impression of them was from their old VW Beetle model, which was terrible. No offense to whoever designed it, but it was not very good. The headlights were bulgy and weird and taillights were wrong. But then I think it was the Bronco actually that got my attention. And I was like, wait a second, what's this? And then I saw the Blazer, the Chevy Blazer that they did, the K5. That was really nice too. And in fact, I've done a couple of customs with that one just because it's just proportionally, it looks really good. The tires, the wheels are super cheap for the obvious reasons. But the one that really blew me away was the T2, because the T2 doesn't use their usual weird extruded wheels where the wheels stick out further so they can get the chrome on it. It uses steel type wheels, and you brought that up in the article, and I was like, and they're the right proportion too. They look good. They got like a Porsche 356 that they did, or the wheels look wrong on it. They're too big. And the Ford truck that they did, the old dent side Ford truck is good, but its scale doesn't look quite right. But the Chevy Blazer looks really good. The Bronco looks really good. I agree with you. The M3 is kind of They've got a Grand National. It's not bad. But yeah, they're hidden in there. We actually hosted a custom contest usually where people could only use Maisto castings with Maisto. And it was a lot of fun seeing what people could do with them, because underneath the cheap wheels and the cheap paint is actually a really good casting on some of these cars. And you give them some detail and you put some proper wheels on them, and they look really nice. Even if you don't get an interior and you can just go with, oh, well, they're tinted or whatever. And so I think it's something that I agree with you, though. Like, I think Maisto knows exactly the lane that they need to be in. And even with their premium line, they're still geared towards kids. And again, that's great. That's exactly what we need. We need brands that are out there that are kid friendly. And I appreciate that they offer a rubber tire premium that is still very affordable and gives kids something that feels a little nicer and gives them the taste of, especially with their like transporter line, where it comes with like a transporter truck and a car, and you can get them for like $8 or $9 here in the States. And something like that from Hot Wheels would be $15 to $20. And so I think they're a really interesting brand, because like you said, they know exactly the lane that they're in and they're comfortable with it. They're not trying to be TLV or Greenlight even, or Johnny Lightning. They're like, hey, we're here for the kids who want to run it through the carpet and run it down the track. And even though it may not be as good on the track as a Hot Wheels car, it's still something that there's a very low barrier to entry. Kids can buy one with their pocket money. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, it's definitely important. You touched on it with the customizing route. They're so easy to take apart. Because the top half is plastic normally, and there's no rivets to drill out and nothing to really kind of obstruct you. And
sure.
I've taken apart some real pain, pardon my French, of cars recently, and I just started work on an old Hot Wheels Chevy Citation, and that was a real
metal
pain to
base.
get apart.
Yeah.
Yep.
A metal base and trying to get the axles out and everything. But yeah, the Maisto, you're right, we do need that sort of entry level thing for kids to be able to say, I can afford that with my pocket money, or their parents to be able to say, hey, it's not actually that bad. We can get two for the two of those, the price of this one Hot Wheels or something. Because I think when I picked it up in the UK, it was £1.49, and in the same store, Hot Wheels were worth £3 or £2.99. So it's half the price. And I think when I was a child, it didn't, price was certainly a motivation for my parents when they were buying the things. It was the defining factor. And I think I was lucky enough to live somewhere where Matchbox and Hot Wheels were comparatively cheap. But I know if I'd have been growing up in this era, Maisto would have been the way I was going. Definitely. They're serving a purpose, and we need them.
But I do want to give you guys a little bit of a shimmer of hope, because I found a set of premium, true to scale, 1/64 scale Volvos that Maisto did for Volvo dealerships, I believe over in China. They all have rubber tires. They all have interiors. They all have clear glass. Amazing lensed headlamps and tail lamps. Really premium set. And I believe there's a 5-pack that is a premium line of Volvos in true 1/64 scale. So they're so big, they can do any level of quality that's out there. I had one question, Alex. I want to ask about one that I got excited about a year ago, and I've seen where you've grabbed a couple of Tarmac's J car collection, kind of a throwback to some classic 70s and 80s Japanese cars. Tell me your thoughts on that line.
Gonna like this probably too much. I've got to say I wasn't too impressed. I'm impressed with the choice of casters that they're bringing, but they are. I first opened one. I did an unboxing video on my Instagram, and I was able to see that immediately from the feel of them. I thought it doesn't feel quite like a Tarmac car. This feels like somebody else's. This feels like markedly different. I looked at it and I thought, hang on a minute, take a moment, because I think they retail for a bit less than the Tarmac regular stuff. So I opened up. I think I got the Bluebird 510, the NSX, the S13 Sylvia, and the AE 86. Yeah. So I unboxed those, and the NSX is a dud. They will not like me saying that, but it is a dud. It is woefully proportioned, and it just does not look right. I think the ratio, the front wheels are way too small, the backs are way too big. It doesn't sit right at all. The AE86, the S13, the 510, proportion-wise, bang on. But they feel different. They feel a little bit cheaper. They feel a little bit less refined, let's say. And I did a bit of digging and found that they're IXO castings, I think, from some 164 part work in Japan. So I don't think they're built to the same standard. They're probably built in the same factory, but maybe not the same standard. The QC is not quite there. There's a few bits of slot, for want of a better word, in the manufacturing. It's a line that I feel it will continue, because these part work magazines, they're interesting to me because IXO and the manufacturer that is behind a lot of the brands that are out there now, they have got access to nearly every country on the planet. And there was a part work that was released in Spain. I think it was 2 years ago now, and it was supposed to be 164 cars that were common and popular to Spanish roads, and it fell flat. But one of the first cars that they released was the Opel Kadett, the GTE. Now that same casting, the same car is now a Tarmac, and the same casting and the same car is now a BR Classics over in Brazil. So these part works can spawn a lot of different avenues, because the castings reappear in other places. And I think the J collection, it will be, I think it's a good way in for a slightly more casual collector, because they are a bit lower priced than some of the more premium, your TLV, etc. But they didn't really grab me too much. I think it will be a line that will be long lived, though, because this part work probably went on for many, many issues. There's a lot of cars that they could probably do. I'm hoping for a few more unique castings, because I feel like we've got far too many Datsun 510s. I never thought I'd say that, but we do. There's not really many new avenues you can go down with Japanese cars. There are a few, but I see Tomica going down them more than I see Tarmac going down them.
I appreciate the candid thoughts. I was really pumped about them, and that kind of recalibrates my expectations.
I think it's just get one in your hand and see how you feel. The S13, to me, that was actually a really, really good one. That to be fair to them, that was a great one to pick up. But the NSX was so bad. I thought I just looked at it and thought, why did they let this happen? Because you've got the Tomica version that's out there, even the Tomica Premium, which is their kind of mid range, is a better proportion model than that one. But they are interesting. They certainly look good sat on my shelf, so I'll give them that. But to handle it as a different, it's just that there's something not quite there for me.
Understood.
I was thinking about your Alfa Romeo article, the GTV6 that Hot Wheels did recently, and I agree with you. It reminds me of Maisto. It's one of those things where you got like a great casting hiding in a rough paint job. And I didn't even realize until I read the article that there's a hidden engine in there. It's really cool. That that was something that we learned when we went to the Hot Wheels National Collector Show, was that seeing the Easter eggs that all the designers are sneaking into these cars, that you have to literally drill the car apart, and there's a complete engine under there. And think that's so cool. But at the same time, I think it's a combination of having to hit a certain price point, but also, yeah, it feels like even on the main line, sometimes it could be better. Are there some other things that commonly grind your gears with other brands, or is it like Hot Wheels has rough paint or Maisto has cheap wheels? Are there other things that really kind of bother you about other brands stereotypically that you wish they'd address?
Yeah, definitely. The Hot Wheels at the moment, it's the paint, the decals. They're just not. The same article I wrote about the GTA and the bad paint on there. I wrote about the Chevrolet Impala SS from the I think the Boulevard line, and that was just. I bought them both on the same day. I think I spent £1.85, £2 on the GTA, and I'd spent £9.99 on the Impala. And I looked at the Impala when I got it back, and I thought, what is this supposed to be? It had a lazy eye, like one of the eyes was drooped. The badge on the back was illegible. You couldn't read what it said. And I thought, this is just... I did at one point have a Johnny Lightning version of that car, and I can't find it at the moment. I say at one point because it could have gone. It's probably somewhere in the attic above me. But I thought back to that and thought, just a huge difference in what I'm feeling, and I felt so let down by that. I think that their QC can go from being incredible to being desperately poor. And when I look at Matchbox lines, considering they're both owned by Mattel, I don't see many Matchbox with the same kind of QC slips as I do with Hot Wheels. I can see a lot of Hot Wheels where I can go to the supermarket and there'll be 9 times out of 10 there'll be 1 or 2 errors in a case where the decals have slipped, or they'll be missing altogether, or the paint will be scuffed, or there'll be something horrible in it, or whatever. Don't tend to get that a lot with Matchbox, but on the subject of paint and gripes with other manufacturers, and this is something I've let them know about repeatedly. Majorette, with their opening parts, it's a huge thing for them, a huge thing for them. But what lets them down, especially when they do engine bays and large opening parts, is they leave the underneath of those parts unpainted. So you're opening up onto raw Zamak, and it just kind of nags a little bit to me. The wheel choice of the Majorette's always been a big thing, but they are really, really improving on that now. And that's something that we spoke at length about when we were at the influencer event. They really are trying to change that. And we learned about the constrictions that they have with manufacturing and how difficult it is to size things. But they recently brought in the steel wheel that's on the Citroen HY and the Citroen DS, and wonderful, really good choice of wheel. It's really redeeming to collectors like me to see that, because gone are the kind of anachronistic, like 10 spokes or God knows what that they were fitting to other cars. These are here, and I hope that they'll stay, get better, different variations of them. But in terms of any other manufacturers, there's not really too much else that bothers me. I collect anything. You'll have seen my collecting habits are as broad as they are long. I have things that were made in Soviet ammunition factories in the 1960s and factories that made measuring devices in Belarus. So quality is not really it's not the overriding thing for me. It's how a casting or a car makes me feel. And at the moment, there's not a lot that gripes me. There really doesn't. I'm kind of a bit tired of the influx of RWB and Liberty Walk stuff. I'm a huge fan of both, but like, we're going to have to change direction at some point. And another thing that gripes me as well, Gulf livery. Yeah. Gulf liveries and Advan livery, but Gulf liveries in particular, why do we need them on a Hummer? I think one of the Chinese brands did. Why do we need it on a Transit super van like Hot Wheels did? It makes zero sense to me. It just ruins that. It's one of the classic all-time liveries. It needs to be left be.
Yeah.
And that goes with Advan liveries and HKS liveries now. They just need to be left alone, and that's it.
I think the only thing that's left is a series of Fast and Furious cars that are all Gulf livery. That would be the end of the story.
We joke, Yeah, we joke a lot on Lamley about that kind of thing. There's a writers group chat, and they're constantly finding the most random golf liveried thing that they can to just throw at me to say, this will boil Alex's blood, this. And it does. I see stuff and who's past that? Like, have they been sniffing glue? Have they been like dropped on the head or something? Like, who has decided that that's a great idea to do that? But people lap it up. It's the anachronistic weird liveries. Monster's another one. It's like, it doesn't need to be on a bin lorry. Just leave it where it was.
Right. Oh, yeah. Like you hit it. It's basically, it sells. Like, you put golf livery on anything, and there are people that will buy it regardless of what it is.
Yeah, of course.
It's an Olds 442. Olds 442 never had a golf livery on it, but who cares? And the same with like Moon Eyes. Like, we're gonna have, if I had a nickel for every Moon Eyes gasser I've seen, or whatever, but it's a dual marketing thing. It's like the Fast and Furious thing. They're gonna do Fast and Furious cars because there are insane people out there that want every car from the Fast and Furious Hot Wheels line, and I'm going, that's too many cars, especially you start talking variants.
As well.
But yeah, that's the weird balance. I mean, I have to remind myself sometimes they are a business, and the business is going to go, well, what sells? And Advan cars sell, and HBK or Liberty Walk stuff sells, and golf sells, and Moon Eyes sells. So it's going to happen, and we'll all roll our eyes and buy something else. What do you think is the brand that most people are sleeping on that they should be paying attention to, especially if they're looking to be a new collector?
Oh, that's a great question. I do think a lot of people, it's probably going to sound biased, this, and like off camera, there's someone working for Majorette just there, just poking me. But I do feel like that they're overlooked a lot because they're in direct competition with Hot Wheels and Matchbox, whether they like it or not. They are there. I sometimes feel that they think that their main competitor is CQ, and it might be in Germany and it might be in France, but it certainly isn't in the rest of the world. And I do still see a lot of comments saying that they're not true to scale, they're too big, they're too this, they're too that. I would urge anybody to just try and pick up, I don't know, the one that springs to mind instantly, the Nismo GT3, the GTR GT3. That is a superb casting. And I think that those kind of Majorette models are just seriously overlooked, and especially with the new Japan Classics line that's I think it's just been released.
Yep.
They've done the Toyota Supra, and it's a far better casting in terms of a casting that you find on the pegs than Hot Wheels version. It's far better. It might be a bit bigger, but it actually looks like a Toyota Supra. It doesn't look flattened and there's not this horrible big spoiler glued to the back of it. It's a nice casting. It's a really nice casting, and I think a lot of people, they will overlook Majorette because I think they're still finding their feet. They're gaining ground very quickly on Hot Wheels and Matchbox, and I urge more people to just go out and see which Majorettes they can pick up.
They made a splash when that was one of the first models when they got into some of the bigger box stores over here. One of their very first ones, and we had just a smattering of castings that were available, almost maybe 4 or 8 at first. But that GT3, that was one of the first ones, and they're doing really well with their pink slips line over here too.
Mm-hmm. It's very popular.
Beautiful AMG in orange that they released. So no, you're right. And the thing that they're doing over here, I'm sure you were already aware of this, but they're in Walmart, the biggest source for most diecast collectors in the States. They're right there beside all the American brands. So they've done
Target
well
too.
to get in. Target too. Yep.
Yeah. So, and
Across
taking
the
up more
lake
and more
continue
shelf
to
space.
grow.
Good.
Yeah.
Can I ask? Go ahead, Alex.
No, go for it. Go for it.
I would like, from somebody who knows diecast cars around the world, in case someone around the world is watching, I've heard a few brands, and I don't know if people caught all of them or knew what they were all about. So I wanted to ask you, for fans of Brazilian cars, what's a brand to look into?
BR Classic, straight away. It's something that I've been aware of for a long time, but the differences the difficulties in being where we are in the UK and having left Europe rather stupidly, shipping rates have just exploded. So getting hold of them here has been a real nightmare for me. I reached out to them directly, actually, last year, the year before, and I said I'd love to get one of these in the UK and to write about them, but I can't justify paying $120 for this thing. It's insane. So they actually managed to very kindly. I still had to, pay a significant sum for it, but it was a damn sight cheaper than what I would have done on eBay. I managed to get one of their Opalas into the UK and review it on Lamley, and it's a work of art. It really is. They're great models, and
the blue one.
Their choice of castings to anyone that's not into Brazilian cars, just to people who are into the weird and the wonderful. There's no end of things you're going to find with them. They do buses as well. I think they're going into trucks soon. They've just brought the Chevrolet. They've taken the Opel Kadett casting from Tarmac and IXO, and they're doing the Chevrolet version of that. They're doing the Escort, the Ford Escort, which should get fans in the UK quite doe-eyed, but I guarantee you won't be able to get hold of one. But yeah, I would urge anybody that side of the Atlantic to look at BR Classic, because they are really good models.
I'm with you. I've got the entire Series 1 lineup, and they are spectacular. On the level of Tomica TLB, can hold their own with any brand out there.
Don't touch that dial. Diecast Breakdown will be right back after these messages. Diecast Breakdown is produced in partnership with TWYCE Diecast and Driven Dreams Org on YouTube. Check out their channels in the video description and subscribe for more epic Diecast content. Diecast Breakdown would like to thank Diecast Heroes Magazine for supporting this program. Diecast Heroes Magazine is the premier digital and print resource just for diecast customizers. Visit diecastheroes.com and see what the best customizers in the world are up to.
Hey, this is Larry Wood.
This is Derek from Honest Diecast.
Hey, this is Chad Reed from Round 2.
This is Mike from Gaslands.
The SRT Joe Vita Show.
This is Champion DJ K.
This is Mad Vision here.
This is Diecast Dude.
And you're watching Diecast Breakdown.
And now, the thrilling conclusion of this week's episode of Diecast Breakdown.
Last one I want to test you with. Someone in Australia wants some of the best Australian cars in premium diecast. Who are you recommending?
Beyonce, straight away. There's another brand as well, and there's Authentic Collectibles as well, who do the V8 supercars. They are someone that's caught my eye every now and then, and I keep hovering over some of the stuff on the site and thinking, I'll just jump into that, and I'll get one of those, but I never get around to it. But Beyonce I believe they've got ties with Ottawa, and they are spectacular 164s. Yeah, they're really, really good. I've got two. I want more because I'm someone who really got a kick out of them, and still gets a kick out of watching the TWYCE Bathurst shootouts. The lap times by Peter Brock and Tom Walkinshaw and Mark Scaife. And I've got I think it's a Peter Brock Holden, I think it is, and a Ford Falcon, Ford Performance version, and they're both stunning diecast.
Yep.
And another brand, I think don't know who makes them, but I think it's Aussie Road Rages, they're called.
Aussie, yep.
Yeah, and they do, if you had a four-door Holden, or a Holden Sandman panel van, or God knows what, they are the people that will be able to do that for you. And they really appeal to me. And again, it's something that I really keep. I have a big diecast wish list, and it distracts me quite a lot when I'm on eBay and on Google. And every time I'm passing by their stuff, I think, yeah, I'll pull the trigger one day. And it's not happened yet, but Beyonce it has, and fingers crossed. I won't promise anyone that I'll write about things on Lamley just yet, because I never get around to it, but it will get there eventually.
All right. We will look forward to it.
All right. Well, Alex, as we wrap things up here, I want to once again remind people where they can find you, follow you, all that good stuff. So let's give them that information one more time in case they're having a hard time finding Lamley Group.
So Lamley are They're at www.lamleygroup.com, I think. I'm on Instagram at Alex the Hoarder. I've got a page on Facebook as well. If you search Alex the Hoarder, I come up there. Yeah, feel free to jump on if you want to. There's a lot of weird and wonderful stuff that I share and collect. And I think if you're a fan of some of the more obscure things, then definitely give me a follow.
Alex, before we sign off, we asked you if you had some cars that you wanted to show off from your collection you're particularly proud of. I want to give you a minute to show those cars off and let people see what's in your collection that you love.
It's just one car I managed to pick
right.
out of the essentials. Last year, I think it was, I was talking to a fellow collector from Spain on Instagram, and he happened to mention this name and said that if you want to find something unique and something different, check this guy out, because there's no more unique and no more different than this collection. So I clicked on this guy's page and I looked at this stuff and I thought, wow, these are, and immediately I realized it's not diecast we're dealing with, but 3D printed resin. And I reached out to this guy and thought I'd be really interested in purchasing one of his models, because he's Argentine. All of his subjects that he produces are, we've touched on Brazilian cars here, but there's a huge car scene in Argentina. There are cars there that I'd never even heard of before. So I thought, wow, this has got to be something that I look at. And it was also around the time that I started to discover some of the Argentine brands like Galgo and Booby. I'd been looking at a few of their stuff and managed to thankfully obtain a few pieces, because they're really difficult to get a hold of in the UK. But yeah, the guy that I reached out to was called Dario Cafaro, and he has I think it started as a customizing parts business for Hot Wheels in Argentina. He does wheels, he does accessories and stuff, but he also does full models. So this is a IKA Torino,
Grief.
which is a car that is unheard of, really, outside of South America. And in 1/64 scale, it is something that has only been done by, I think Booby did one in the Mini Booby line, but if you can find one, then be my guest, because they are nigh on impossible to find, especially in good condition. And it is a very significant car to the Argentine car industry. It's a significant car in terms of the whole of South America and the automotive industry over there. But it's also a significant car, I think, to us in Europe, because there was an event in the 60s called the Nürburgring 84 Hours, would you believe? It was an 84-hour full-on race, and these things, the race versions finished, I think they won it actually, or they came very highly placed. But this is the little Torino. Now it's 3D printed, it's resin, it's a bit, it's rough and ready a little bit, but the details, it's hand painted, it's all hand detailed, everything in there is handmade. And this guy, Dario, is very skilled indeed, very skilled. And this,
even though it's resin, it's got glass pieces, I guess, kind of vacuum sealed.
Yeah, he's got, I think it's vacuum sealed. He knows what he's doing. Whatever he does, I don't know how he does it. But his details on these, I mean, I've seen videos of him applying the hand touches to these, the finishing touches.
That's amazing.
I mean, this one, you will not be able to make it out, but there is a wooden rimmed chrome steering wheel in there that's hand painted. And it started a relationship, a friendship with him through Google Translate, because I reached out to him through his website and said, is there any chance I can get some of this in the UK? And I've had a lot of people, even in Holland after Brexit, saying, no, we're not posting for the UK anymore. But Dario didn't let anything like that, like no language, no nothing, be a barrier. And it started a good connection and a real, it's stuff that I've covered a lot on Lamley in the past few weeks. I covered a Cafaro pickup truck, I think last week before. He does a lot of unique vehicles, and some that European buyers might be aware of as well, like the Fiat 127. That's one of the vehicles he does. Fiat 128, Fiat 600, Peugeot 403, and there are stuff like the Kaiser Jeep and things that he does that were unique to the Argentine market. He's someone worth looking at, definitely.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Lamley has a hashtag tranquil collecting, and that is tranquil collecting to me at its finest. You make a connection.
I agree.
It's a unique car. What could be better?
Great story too.
Love it. That is so cool. So that's one of my favorite things to do on the show is see what people actually have in their collection that they really dig. And that is a unique one to be sure. Definitely not one that's come up before. So love it. So, all right. Well, Alex,
Thank you.
again, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been lovely getting to know you a little bit better and learn a little bit more about what it's like to be a writer in this hobby that we know and love. And we'll look forward to having you back on again real soon and talking more about some tiny cars.
I'd be happy to come back. Really would be. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Again, big thank you to Alex. Big thank you to David, my co-host, for all he does and making this show go and coordinating everything. And of course, a shout out to our patrons once again who make the show go. If you want to join their ranks, you can visit diecastbreakdown.com or click the little join button down below if you're watching us on YouTube. And if you're listening to us on the podcast app of your choice, hey, we've got a YouTube channel. Go check it out. We got a whole lot more than just the podcast on there. And if you're watching us on YouTube, hey, we got a podcast channel. You can go check that out if you're tired of looking at my face. So check those out. And again, click all the likes, shares, subscribes. Tell your friends. That's the big thing. If you can, tell your friends, share the show. It's really how this show has been growing like it has, and we're so grateful for that. And as always, we want to thank you for coming along with us for the ride. So until next time, stay fresh, cheese bags.
Thanks for listening to Diecast Breakdown. If you enjoyed today's show, please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and tell a friend to listen in. Find Diecast Breakdown on your favorite social media platforms or visit diecastmedianetwork.com to learn more about this and our other projects. Diecast Breakdown is a presentation of Flying Valiant and the Diecast Media Network.